Anomalies. Anomalies.
Anomalies.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. This is a program about things seen out of the corner of one's eye, about shadows and what lurks in those shadows. This is a program about the unexplained and the unexplainable.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Anomalies. I actually took time today to look up the word anomaly because I thought, we consistently use that as the title of our show, but I'm beginning to wonder how many people know what the hell an anomaly is. An anomaly is something that deviates from the standard. And I think that's what we try to do in our shows. Our last show that Dave and I did was on 9/11, and we had an interesting talk with Mike Barger, who's a 9/11 for the Truth guy. Well, today we're going to go down another path that's a little bit of a deviation from the standard. We're going to talk about how to talk about your critters. And we're going to talk with a critter of mine, Dolly. And to do that, we have Susy Davis, who is an animal communicator. And she has an interesting story about how she got to be an animal communicator. So, Susy, thanks for being on with us today with Anomalies.
Well, thank you for having me.
Sure. And Dave's here with us. So why don't you start out with the events that kind of precipitated you discovering that you could communicate with animals in ways that you maybe didn't comprehend to begin with. Start with that.
Okay, well, I'm going to start from the beginning. As a child, I always had a knowing, but I never knew why. And back then, it was not something they spoke about, so I didn't pursue it. In 1971, I had a near-death experience when I was 7 months pregnant with my son. I had an out-of-body experience. My husband didn't have to go to work that day, and we slept until noon. When I woke up, I looked at him and I said, if you don't hold me right now, I'm going to die. And I did. I left my body and I started heading up toward a bright light. Off to the left of me, it looked like monks in robes, brown robes with their hoods up and their hands praying. In front of me, it looked like a podium with a bright light on top of it. And the peace I felt, I cannot describe to this day. And as I got closer to the bright light, I noticed, well, wait a minute, that's light at the end of the tunnel. And I put my hand up in front of my face and I said, no, stop. If I don't have a chance, the baby has to have a chance. So I went back down into myself and woke up 3 days later. And the doctor comes up to me and he says, you're a walking miracle. And I looked at him and I said, why do you say that? And he said, well, because a woman that far in pregnancy that had E. coli as severely as you had it will abort the baby and die within 24 hours, and you didn't. Right then and there, the knowing that I had was that my son was going to be doing something great, which he has done, and that I would be helping somebody in the future. Well, my son counseled for the church. He counseled drug addicts. To this day, 3 of the drug addicts that he counseled are straight. They come up to me and they say, tell your son thank you. And I said, I will, thank you. And then in 2000, the family was being called to Madigan for my father. They didn't know what was wrong with him and they felt that he was going to pass. So they were calling out the family. And after my near-death experience in 71, I knew I'd be helping somebody in the future. I didn't know who, when, where, what it would be. And other than it would be from the E. coli experience that I had. And my dad was in the hospital, the doctor comes out, starts telling all about his findings and what his symptoms are and all of that kind of stuff. And I just looked at the doctor and I said, did you check him for E. coli? I had E. coli and he's got the same symptoms I had. Did you check him for E. coli? And the doctor's jaw just dropped. He went back in, came back out an hour later. He says, well, we've got him on medication. He has E. coli and he's going to make it. And he did. So when you have these experiences, my message to you is don't discount what you get, because you have these abilities. They were given to you as a gift, and that's how I look at them, as a gift. And you can help many, not just people, but animals as well, by the experiences that you've had. And then moving into 2004, I was at home and my son and his wife were living with me at the time. And apparently I was making some funny noises from my bedroom, and my daughter-in-law ran to get my son, who was a medic for the military for the scout unit. And he was also a volunteer EMT for the Lacey Fire Department. And she ran to get him and said I was making funny noises. He came in and I was gone. And he revived me. He rolled me on my side and revived me and brought me back. And as he brought me back, I continued to seize for 20 minutes longer, causing some medical issues, a lot of memory I've never gotten back. But I look at it, I don't look at it as something bad, or I don't focus on something bad that happened to me. I look at it as a learning experience, in that I gained from it. Because when I came back, when I went there, I went to an archway door. My hands were on the outside of the archway. Jesus is standing in front of me on the inside of the door. And I looked at him and I says, I can't go yet. You have to send me back. I have many animals and people that I have to help here on this earth in this lifetime. You have to send me back. I turned, and as I turned, I was turned around and looked at him, and I says, no, by the way, I have to live a long time because I have a lot of animals and people to help. And then poof, I was back into my body. And when I got back there, oh my God, I had people and animals and people and animals from the other side and angels and stuff. They were just chattering. And I said, whoa, stop. I says, I can only do one at a time. And so I decided then and there, after I recovered, that I would start doing animal communication, because the animals, I could hear every word they were saying. They were talking to me and chattering to me. They said, finally, 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 somebody that can listen. And so I started studying with an animal communicator and did my first class. The second class was canceled due to snow, so we rescheduled it for a later time. Well, the people that were registered apparently didn't want to do the second class, and I did, so I had her out to lunch at my place, and we had a 3-hour class. And during that 3-hour class, I was learning, she was talking. After the class was over, she looked at me and she says, now, I have a question for you. I said, okay. And she says, can you tell me why my cat pees on the bed? And I looked at her and I said, you mean you don't know that? And she says, I can't figure it out. And I said, okay, well, what I do first is I have to do a remote scan on her. And as I got into the zone to call the cat forward to ask permission, all of a sudden 3 cats show up. And I said, whoa. I said, there's this calico cat and he's just right up front and center. She says, oh, that's Riley. Just tell him to step back. So I told him to step back. And I had this meek little kitty come up. And I asked her permission. I got permission. So I did a scan on her. And I said, well, there's something wrong with her back end and it goes down her legs. And the animal communicator said, well, what happened when she was a kitten, she was standing on top of the back of a chair and she jumped down onto a wood floor and she went splat and both of her back legs went out. And so now she wobbles. And I said, well, what I'm being shown is that when you pick her up on your bed, you're picking her up wrong. And it releases the urine. She can't help it. So you need to pick her up in a different way. I saw her 3 weeks later in the store. And she comes up to me and she says, I have to tell you this. I said, what? And she says, ever since you gave me the information on my cat, she has not peed once on the bed except for one time. And that was her fault because she picked her up wrong. So I thought that was pretty amazing. Now, there's a lot of other animals and stuff. I was at a New Year's singles party for the church. And as I walked into the bathroom, I was studying animal communication then. I walked into the bathroom and there's a dog laying in the bathroom. And I says, oh, this will be a good chance for me to practice my animal communication skills. Mm-hmm. And so I just sat on the side of the tub and I says, so what's your name? And she goes, Princess. And I just kind of floored me and I kind of sat back and I says, oh, I said, that's a very beautiful name for a very beautiful dog. I said, what's your favorite color? And she goes, pink. And so her person was calling her and I let her out and walk out there and Precious is sitting in front of her person, tail straight out, looking at her person with intent looks. And I told this person what she had said to me. I said, what is her name? And she told me what it was, which I can't remember to this day. And I said, well, she told me her name was Princess. And she says, well, I've been calling her my princess the last 2 days. I said, well, she really likes that name. Mm-hmm. And I said, she also told me that her favorite color was pink. And her person crosses their arms and looks down at Princess. And she says, well, I know that one. And she's getting a pink collar here too. All of a sudden from the left-hand side, Princess comes through and she says, can you ask her for a pink leash too? And I just started roaring. And her person says, what? I says, well, she wants a pink leash too. And she crosses her arms and looks at Princess. And she says, oh, you want the whole shebang, huh? And Princess starts wagging her tail. Then I saw her a couple of weeks later in the store and she comes up to me and she says, I have to tell you something. Before you talk to my dog, and they don't like being called dogs, they're your canine companion or your babies, and you are their person, not their owner or their mom or their dad. She says, after you talked to Princess, before you did, she just cowered. After you talked to her, she just struts. And I thought that was just a kick because she's a really special girl. There have been other times that I've had 2 service dogs, and each time I've studied healing touch for animals. I'm certified up to level 2, and I started to take 3 and 4, and people at Healing Touch looked at me and they said, you don't need to take it, you're already doing it. And I have done Healing Touch with equine, feline, canine. I've done it with every other kind of animal that I can think of. And it's really interesting because my first service dog, Shadow, knew what I could do. And by the way, my service dog, Shadow, saved my life 5 times. Oh. Because I have nocturnal seizures, I'm not alerted when I'm going to have them, but he can tell when they would be, and he would let me know. Or if I would be asleep, he'd take care of it, which he did, because I felt this thud on my chest. Then I woke up and I looked up and he's coming down with another thud on my chest. And I looked at him and I says, oh, okay, thank you. And I rolled over and he laid down next to me. I put my arm over him and we went back to sleep. But he did this several times for me. He would tell me when I would have to sit down or lay down. Just an amazing guy. And he knew my healing abilities way before I did. I studied with the Reiki master for 8 years doing DNA and quantum physics healing. I combine my healing touch for animals, my Reiki, and I do a little bit of Qigong and T-touch. I combine all of that together in my healing modalities, and it's been very effective for people and animals.
Let me ask a question here, and then maybe Dave wants to get in here too. So we have you on the show to talk about your abilities to communicate with animals, but I've got kind of a question about the events that allowed you to be aware of these abilities. What did your 2 near-death experiences teach you about the nature of death?
Nature of death?
Yes.
Both of
And
them.
what that whole process is all about.
The whole process taught me never to discount what you're given, what you experience, because there's a reason for it. At least with me, and I don't look at things in a negative way. I try to choose the positive. And it's like my son approached me one day and he was talking about college and all of this kind of stuff. And I looked at him and I says, I'm sorry, but I don't remember. And he looked at me and I said to him, I said, but if you tell it to me like it truly happened, then I will remember and we can relive that event. And that's what I've done through the rest of my life so far, is I relive these events in a positive way. And I don't look at it as I don't know what you call it, a bad experience.
Emotional baggage.
Yeah, I let the baggage go.
Mm-hmm.
I let the baggage go. And when it's gone, it's gone. I've done that with 3 bouts of cancer, never had to have chemo. Did that, cancer gone, never come back. And that started when I was 38. The power of the mind is something people don't realize, because everything happens in your mind before in time and space. Before too long, what's happened in your mind becomes a reality in your life. And the other thing is, if you're always planning for the future, you're never there for the present. So you need to live each day to the fullest. And this is what I've learned from the near-death experiences. Learn and live each day to the fullest and share your wisdom, because there are people out there that can relate to that it can actually help. I was in church one day and I was waiting in the coffee line, and I had Shadow, my service dog, with me, and there were 2 people to the right of me sitting down in chairs, a table in between them. All of a sudden, Shadow crosses in front of me, goes over to where the people are sitting. And I looked at her and I says, can I ask you a question? And she said, yes. So I said, do you have something going on in your life? And she looked at me and she says, well, I don't, but I just lost my father a week ago. And I said, well, I says, Shadow's picking up on that. So you just go ahead and pet him. And then all of a sudden from the left, her dad comes in from the other side. And I'm going, oh, great. What do I do? I'm in church. What do I do? I said, well, the word I got was ask. So I told her what my abilities were and asked her if I could share something with her. And she said, yes. So I said, well, your dad is standing here and he's saying something about a jacket. And both her and her husband's jaws just dropped. And when they come in, I have to say what they're saying exactly like they're saying it. And I have to give the oomph they're saying it with. So he came through and I says, he has a message for you. Do you want the message? They said, yes. I said, well, he's saying something about a jacket. Did he have a favorite jacket? And they said, well, he had a lot of jackets, but we kept one and we rolled it up and we put it under the bed. He comes through immediately and he says, oh no, you tell him to get it out from under the bed and hang it up where they can see it, or hang it in the closet, but it does not go under the bed. And they just looked at me and they said, oh my God, that sounds just like my dad. And I said, then he gave me the message, tell them that I love them and that I'm sorry I had to leave so suddenly. And so I gave him that message, and then I let it be. And I went and I got my coffee and over and waited for my coffee. And then she approaches me and she says, can I give you a hug? And I says, well, sure. And so I gave her a hug and she says, you don't know how you've changed my husband and I just from what you said. And I have seen her a few times at church since then. I didn't even know this lady when I first approached her. And she still remembers that to this day. And she took the jacket and put it in a shadow box picture frame and hung it up. So that was pretty cool. Then I've had a lot of experiences with animals and people. A lot of people coming from the other side. I have had a friend that helped the police department, and she would call me occasionally to ask me questions, and I described what I saw, and she says, that's exactly what I saw. And I said, in one case, I said, they're going the wrong way. If they turn around and go the other way, they're going to find this person. And I don't know what happened. I didn't ask. I just let it be. But I have had numerous experiences with healing. I have a friend of mine that's a realtor that owns her own realty office and she's a broker. She called me one evening and she said, can you do a remote healing for my son? And I said, sure. And she says, well, he's been in the hospital for 2 weeks with COVID. They just took him off the ventilator and put him on oxygen. He still has pneumonia and they won't let him go home. And I said, sure. So that night I did about an hour healing on him. And when I do my healings, I'll scan them with the DNA and quantum physics healing that I have done. I can pinpoint where they're hurting or where the issue is and sweep that negative energy away. And then I take them and I lift them up into the liquid crystal where they're just floating. It's like floating on cloud nine or floating on waves. There's no pressure on your body. And then I do the underneath of them. And then I lower them back down to the table. And when I get done with them, they say, I could feel the floating. Oh, that felt so good. In her case, I did this healing on him. She calls me up the next day at 11 o'clock in the morning. She says, well, what news do you want first? And I said, well, just give me whatever. And so she told me, she says, well, they just did an exam on him. He has no pneumonia. All of his vitals have come back to normal. And he's going home today at noon. And I just said, praise the Lord. The one thing I didn't mention after I came back the second time from my near-death experience while I was at that Christian Singles was I was asking, I sat down and I actually prayed and I said, Lord, I said, you gave me these gifts. There's Christianity over here and there's all these gifts you gave me over here. Is it okay that I use them? Right then and there, golden light surrounded me like in a pyramid shape. The peace I felt was like my near-death experience. A hand comes down and goes clockwise twice. And then off to the right, Jesus is standing there. I see him as plain as I'm looking at you. And he says, yes, I gave you those gifts to use for others. Use them. So I said, all right, what I will do is I will be your facilitator and have you facilitate through me to them. And I will tell people that so they can give you the glory. And that is how I work. I was raised in a Christian family, and that is how I work. And it is something that I do. I have done many healings on people. I just did one on a lady that got polio from hitting on. She was cured of the polio, but she had the residual. The pain was just horrific, and she was slumped over. And so she came to my place for a healing, and I did about an hour healing on her. And when she came in, she was hunched over and she was in a lot of pain. When she left, she was standing up straight. She and after I did the healing on her for her polio issues, she told me she'd been through many Reiki masters. However, she'd never had a healing like I did with her, and that I could use her as a testimony should anybody want to know. Now, getting into the animal communication, I have been very blessed. I will walk by, I talk to the squirrels, I talk to the birds. I've had hummingbirds come up to my face and just literally stay there and buzz and want to talk. So I'll just talk to them. One thing I have learned with animals is they read you telepathically. If you are wondering how, a lot of questions have been asked. How does my dog know when I'm going to take it to the vet and it goes and it runs and hides? Well, for one thing, you're projecting that, whether subconsciously or consciously, that picture that you're getting the leash and you're going to put them in the car and they're going to the vet and they see all of this. So they're going to go run and hide. So if you change your thinking, your pictures in your mind, you probably have a little bit better result.
Now, on that, I want to jump in here because I've worked at a veterinary hospital for 23 years. And of course, there are a million questions I could ask about that. But the main thing that I'm interested in here is that what do you think and believe and know about the connection between humans, the owners' afflictions, their ailments, and a pet's? Because it seems like, and I've not done a study or anything, but it seems like a lot of times you get a pet has a certain ailment and the owner said, yeah, I had the same thing. I had cancer, I had, heart issues, whatever. And my pet is now having the same thing. I mean, surely some of that can be coincidence, but I'm convinced that animals, part of their purpose, maybe, in fact, is to absorb some of that negative energy, whatever you want to call it. And I want to know the relationship that you found between a pet and an owner in terms of, or their people, in terms of the illness aspect.
You're correct. The pet, they don't even like to be called pets. They're the animal will absorb the person's ailment. I witnessed that with a friend of my sister's who had a Doberman, and she had cancer, and she had a particular condition with the cancer, and her Doberman picked up on this and got the same thing and got just as sick as she did. And when they took Jasmine was her name. When they took Jasmine to the vet, they really couldn't understand or figure out what was wrong with her, but she had the same symptoms as her person. Well, unfortunately, the person passed. And after the person passed, the Doberman grieved, but all of a sudden it started getting better. I witnessed this. It started getting better. And I have noticed with my animals, they would take on a lot of my stress. They would take on some of my ailments. They would pick up on that, and they would literally tell me. And if I wasn't paying attention, they'd jump on me or they'd bark at me and tell me what I needed to do. And I'd look at them and I'd say, oh, okay. One day I was at Goodwill, and my service dog, Shadow, was with me. No, it was actually my service dog, Kira, was with me. And she started bumping me in the leg. And I said, because I get really tired sometimes and I don't realize I'm tired. She kept bumping me in the leg and I wasn't paying attention. And then I went over into the furniture section and they had a rocker with one of those gliding stools with it. And she bumped me again really hard. And I said, okay, I need to sit down. So I went and I sat down in this chair and put my feet up on the bench. She crawled up on that bench, put her back feet on the bench and put her paws on my chest. And would not let me get up for 15 minutes, kept me down.
Yeah.
He literally sensed that I needed to rest. Now, with people, we have hearing dogs, we have diabetic alert dogs in the service world. We've got, medical alert dogs is what they call them. And seeing eye dogs are trained differently. Because I have trained 2 service dogs. I have trained 2 service dogs and certified them. So I do know how to train service dogs. And what happens with them is they're amazing. Animals are amazing. They pick up this scent that your body emits before something happens, and they will alert you. And it is up to the person to choose to listen. And I do urge people when I'm doing animal communication, I pick up on a lot of animals that are, when I'm talking to them, they'll say, Mom isn't listening. And I said, I know, I communicate with them telepathically. And I said, I know. I will tell them that they need to listen to you. And that's what I do. I tell them they need to listen to the person. Or to their animal, because their animal is telling them this stuff for a reason. And in my experience with all of the animal communication I have done, it has been incredible. I have, with my healing touch, I learned to do what they procedure called blinders. And my first service dog had some issues with, I think he must have been the run of the litter where he was bullied a lot. And he had some issues that he couldn't let go of the past. So I applied blinders, and it's just a healing modality that I do. I put blinders on him so that he could not see the past and could move forward with the future. And I did that on him for about 15 minutes or so. The next day, he was different animal. He had no fear. He was happy. He did not look back at the past. Noises that bothered him before didn't bother him. I did the same thing with my second service dog, who was a rescue. The breeder had sold her to an agility place in Massachusetts, and they horribly beat her and starved her. They stuck her in a laundry room to starve to death, where all she had was her poop. And when I went to the breeder to get a different dog, but she'd sold it the night before. And she says, but I have the perfect dog for you, because the breeder found out about her abuse and got her back at 8 months. She only weighed 11 pounds. This is a Sheltie. She only weighed 11 pounds. And the breeder said, I know what you do. I know you can do this. And so I went in there and I looked at her. And she was out and about, and I was talking to the breeder about, well, what if we do a breeding and da 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 da. Then I can get her. You can have pick of the litter, and I can get her for free. And we started to talk about that. And every time I talked about it, she went and hid under this chair. I says, wait a minute here. Something I'm not getting. I'm going to call my friend. So I called my friend whose whole family talked animals, and I was still learning. And I said, what is it about this canine that I'm thinking of getting that I'm not getting. And she says, well, she doesn't want to have puppies. She wants to be the puppy. And I looked at her and I says, oh, is that all? I says, okay, you don't have to have puppies. You can be the puppy. I'll buy you and you can just be with me. She came out from that chair, circled twice, and then jumped on me. And I knew right then and there that was the connection. And she was mine till the day that she died. She passed away in March of this year. And it was just amazing. She was tied to my hip. We never went anywhere without each other. Because she was a certified service dog, I have that ability to do that.
So do you have sorry to jump in again. I have so many questions though for you. Do you have an idea of what the purpose of animals is in relation to human? I mean, I'm sure they have an array of purposes, but if you could really summarize what relation do we have, or the ideal relationship with animals, or what we call pets? If someone asks, what is the purpose? Do you have an answer for that?
An animal can teach you love. They can teach you guidance.
Mhm.
They can give guidance in situations. They can relieve stress. They're a great stress releaser, and they're using animals, dogs, cats, in rest homes and other facilities for people that are in assisted living. I watched this happen when I took care of my aunt who had Alzheimer's. She was in an Alzheimer's place. I took both service dogs with me to that place. After they had lunch, they went into this group meeting room to watch TV. And I would bring them out there, and they would perform tricks for the people, and they would sing and as soon as they started to sing, voila, I had the attention of all the people with Alzheimer's. It was incredible. They relate to music.
Hmm.
And the dogs, the animals taught them to enjoy the music, to come and they actually joined in and sang. They weren't singing words, but they were humming and singing. It was just amazing. When I was working for the credit union, there was a man and I that went to this one facility at Christmas time, and we would sing Christmas songs for their people for their Christmas party. So we went there, and this is just relating to the people with Alzheimer's. And there was a man sitting there in a wheelchair next to me, picking at his sweats. And we dressed up for this occasion. We did like semi-formal type stuff. And when we started singing, he looked up to me and he says, "You are very beautiful." And I said, "Well, thank you." I said, "Would you like to sing with me?" And he said, "Yes." So I put the paperwork down there. He sang with me. As soon as we were done singing, he went back to picking his sweats. And when the program was over, started to leave, a nurse comes running up to me with tears in her eyes. She says, "Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. You don't know what you've done." And I said, "Well, what did I do?" She says, "This man has been here for 9 months and hasn't spoken a word. Now we know how to get to him." Animals do the same thing with people. I was reading a book out loud with my service dog, Kira, and she was laying kind of in between my legs on my chest. And all of a sudden she started nudging the book. And I said, "Oh, well, okay, I'm listening. What do you want?" I had stopped reading. She wanted me to continue reading. So I started reading, and then she was quiet. As soon as I quit reading, she nudged the book. She wanted me to go on. So I figured out that she liked to listen to people read. So I would let children read to her, put her in a circle, children gathered around her. And this taught the children how to read. They each took a turn reading, and it taught them how to read. And it was just incredible. I was so happy and so grateful that my dogs could assist in that. I would take Kira into the store, and there would be children that would just be frightened to death of dogs. And I just approached with a happy, positive attitude. And Kira was always very happy and positive and very gentle. And I said, look at what she can do for me. I said, Kira, give me a kiss. And I'd been over and she'd kiss me on the end of my nose. And they'd go, oh. And so they'd reach their hand out. Eventually they'd be petting her head. And one of the kids came around from the outside of the basket and started petting her back. And he says, I want a kiss too. And he put his face down and she kissed him on the nose. And that just changed his whole life. His mom says, oh my God, I can't believe what you've done. So I said, well, it wasn't me. It said it was my animal. I said, she's the one that did the communication. She's the one that shared her gifts. And animals have gifts. They're just immense. They'll give everything they have and not complain and not expect compensation.
It is extraordinary when you think about even an animal that has been mistreated in every horrible way you can think of. They will still come to greet their owner, their person at the door in most cases.
Yes.
Hoping for a new chance. Even in that way, it's amazing animals, their ability to be resilient, to ignore something that would send a human off into PTSD or regret or depression for decades. An animal can overlook that and start each day new somehow.
Right. And I was walking in the park one day, and I think it was Kira with me. And I'm walking along, and there's a family over here playing with this dog. There was the parents and two kids. And they were playing with this dog next to a tree. As soon as I start to walk by, this dog stops dead, turns around and looks at me. And I'm hearing him say, am I in a forever home? And am I in a forever home? And I just, okay, I said, and the people were stunned because he just stopped and he wouldn't pay attention to them. He was just focused on me. Not in a mean way, but in a gentle way, an inquisitive way. And so I said, do you mind if I share something with you? I always ask permission. If they say no, I don't go any further. And they said, well, sure. And I said, this is what I do. I do animal communication. And I said, your animal is a rescue, is he not? Yes, we just got him a couple days ago. I said, well, he's asking me if he's in a forever home. And if he is, you need to look at him and tell him verbally whether he is. And the way that I tell them to do that is, you are in a forever home with me forever and ever, as long as you want me. And I want you forever and ever. And I will tell you that changes an animal around so quickly to know that they're in a stable home and they're never going anywhere else. Because that's the first thing they'll ask me. Am I in a forever home? Then I have to ask the person, are they in a forever home?
One of the things I wonder, I'm being cognizant of time. I'm always the timekeeper in these shows, just so we don't keep a person held hostage on our podcast for months at a time. But you and I kind of, when we first met, I said that I had a dog, and I was interested in finding out a little bit about my dog. Is that something we could do now?
Yes, I'm ready for that. Yes.
Okay. So let me give you a little bit about my dog, Dolly. So I've had Dolly about 3 months. I got her from a rescue. Don't really know much about her life prior to coming to me and being in the rescue. I did hear that she was in a high kill shelter in California. That's where the rescue people got her. But as to what what happened to her prior. How she got in to the shelter. Have no idea about that. And Dolly is just a wonderful little dog, just a Cairn Terrier. So there are a couple of questions I'd like to ask
Okay.
Dolly through you, if I could.
First of all, the first thing I'm getting is that she was dropped off as a puppy, a little puppy. And there was another street dog. It was black, that kind of took her in and helped her along the way until she could fend for herself. She fended for herself for quite a while and was beat up a little bit here and there. The black dog, it was a lab cross, actually helped her. I'm seeing the dog catchers. I'm getting she probably was picked up about 7 or 8 months. She was on the streets for quite a while. There were some kind people that fed her, what they could, but she was on the streets for quite a while and she was pretty skittish. And then when she got dumped in the kill shelter, she was just in there with a massive amount of dogs.
One of the things I noticed about Dolly is she tends to be what I would call a reactive dog, which is if we're taking her out for a walk, she gets a little barky toward any human that comes toward her or any other dog. And I suppose
Right.
some of the things you just shared would kind of explain that.
Yeah, she also was kicked aside by some humans. I can see that happening. Get out of the way type thing. She's so sweet. She has the most beautiful eyes. Her eyes are just so soft. And she's really happy. I'm trying to tell her right now. Now, I'm asking you, Dan, is she in a forever home?
Yeah, and the other person that's kind of involved in this is my ex-wife, Michelle, has really bonded with Dolly. I mean, they're inseparable, and that's what we've tried to communicate to Dolly is that, Michelle and I live in the same building, so it's not like we live in the same apartment, but she spends part of her time with Michelle and part of her time with me, and that'll go on for the rest of our lives.
And she's okay with that. She just wants to know if she's in a forever home with you guys.
And the answer is yes.
Okay, well, you need to, both Michelle and you need to tell her that verbally. Michelle, you're going to be going to see Papa, and then you'll come and see Mama for a little while, but you'll always stay between us. You'll never go anywhere else, is what I would recommend you tell her.
All right. That's good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And she, let's see here. I'm asking her if she likes her persons, and she's going, oh, yeah.
I want to say, well, wait till she gets to know us, but that's kind of a joke, kind of.
Yeah, no, she really likes you. She really likes you, but other people she's very leery with.
And do you think that's part of the fact she was on the street for a long time?
Yes, and there's a procedure called blinders that can get rid of that.
Okay.
With the healing touch for animals, that is something that I was taught, and it does work.
I appreciate you sharing what you did regarding Dolly. I know one question that I'm contemplating that's going to be asked by people that watch this, watch our YouTube video is, can anybody communicate with their animals, or do you have to have a near-death experience or some kind of animal communication in order to do that? So Susie, what would be your response to that?
My response to that was people can communicate with their own animals if they watch the body language, if they listen to them. A lot of people think that the animals have to listen to them. But if people listen to their animals, the communication comes naturally. The one suggestion I would make is if you want to communicate with your animals because they communicate a lot telepathically, is to show them pictures in your mind and then speak. And when you do speak, make sure that you don't subconsciously form a negative picture in your mind, because they will see that and they will respond. As far as Dolly with barking at other people, I would carry treats on you and do meet and greets. Are you familiar with meet and greets? It's when you approach a person and they want to pet your animal. First of all, they don't pet them on top of the head. That's a threat. Under the chin, stroking them under the chin is that shows respect. Straight eye contact or approaching them straight on is a threat. Approach them in a U shape. And carrying treats on you and handing a treat to a person that wants to pet them, let them feed, so that she realizes, and you don't have to do this all the time, but so that she can familiarize herself with a person being gentle or kind. This is what I had to do with Kira. I got her at 8 months. I did not certify her till she was 5 years old because I let her take her time. I respected what she went through. It was horrifying what she went through, but I respected that she needed time to deal with this. And I did blinders on her, which did work. And you would never know. When I would bring her I sit on a panel once a week, and she would come with me, and she'd lay down by my chair. And people knew about her background, but they said you'd never know that she had been abused, ever. And she was very well known. Actually, both my service dogs were very well known from Olympia to Lakewood, in all the stores, all the grocery stores, everywhere. Because at one point when I got Kira, I used Shadow with Kira. I trained her with my other service dogs. So I had 2 service dogs that I took with me. And I could communicate with them. I could say, no, and I always did positive training, not the negative. And they actually thanked me for that. And I said, you deserve it. You deserve to be in a positive environment. And they understood that.
Dave, do you have anything else for Susie here?
I'm just wondering, we've had a couple of people come in and talk about near-death experiences, the NDEs, and I'm curious to know more about yours in terms of what was discussed, for lack of a better term, between you and whoever was in charge, or the universe, or whoever you felt, God, Jesus, whoever you felt you were interacting with. Was it made clear that you would work with animals primarily? I mean, or was it just a general idea that you will go help people? And then, but the other part of that question is, do you think everybody has a choice at the moment of death like that? Do some people not have a choice to come back? Because it sounds like you had a very specific You were given a moment to make a decision whether you wanted to continue into the light, so to speak, or come back. What are your thoughts on that? I know you can't speak for everyone, but just your thoughts on that.
My experience on that was I chose to come back. I knew that I was not finished here on this earth in this lifetime, that I had to come back and I had to help many people and I had to help many animals. Doing what I'm doing was, I had no idea. I just knew that whatever I was sent back with, I had to pursue. And that's what I've done. And it's brought me this far and it's taking me even further, which I'm very grateful for, because that is my goal in life, is to help people and be grateful for helping them, help animals and be grateful for helping them.
Do you think that everybody has a mission like that, and it just takes a while to find it, or some people never find their mission?
I know people that have crossed over and said they wanted to stay, and they were told, no, you have to go back, your work isn't finished. I know people that said they wish they could cross over, and immediately God has said, it's not your time. You have so many years. I can also predict when a person is going to pass or an animal is going to pass, but I choose not to give that information unless it's an emergency, because I don't want people to put things in a timeline. I want, because miracles are there. They can happen at any time, and I don't want to limit a person's ability to have a miracle.
Is that a burden to you? That seems like when you said when you first came back that you heard everything chattering, everyone talking, everyone's so excited to hear you. And is that, if you could put it in simpler terms for those of us who have not experienced something like that, is it like just tuning into multiple frequencies rather than being stuck with one station, so to speak? And
there's different frequencies.
How do you learn to tune? I mean, doesn't that would potentially drive a human insane, right? Having all that coming at you. So how do you navigate that, and how do you learn to weed through all that?
I did say stop. This is my choice. This is what I can do. And that's what I do. I said, stop. I can only do one person at a time.
Okay.
One animal at a time. You
just ask for it.
You have to ask for it. Yeah. It was very clear to me that I couldn't go. In the first near-death experience, I couldn't go because my son had to have a chance. In the first near-death experience, I basically saved my son's life by choosing to come back. In my second near-death experience, he saved mine. And I chose to come back. And that's why I say, if and when a person has these near-death experiences, don't discount what you get. I had a friend of mine call me. Her mother was dying, and she lived in another state. And she says, I really need to know. Well, this was an emergency. So I said, you have 2 days to get there. She got on a plane, got delayed, did not make it to her mom. Her mom died in 2 days. I knew the exact time and date my mother was going to pass in March. I knew 6 months prior to that. And I said, she's going to pass on the 17th of March at 1 p.m. in the afternoon. I said, she's got one more mission to do in life, and that's to pass on the same day my dad passed. And she passed on that day at 1 p.m. My dad passed on that day 21 years prior at 2 p.m. That was just amazing to me. But I even told the hospice nurse. I got over there at 6:30 in the morning, called the hospice nurse, called all my family, said, get over here now, she's going to pass. They got there. I told the hospice nurse she's going to pass at 1 o'clock. The hospice nurse called it at 1 p.m. So it's not like I can't do it. I'll do it in emergency situations, but I I don't want to limit. I don't want to put limitations on any life. And that's why I don't do it.
That's a good point, because we've had other guests, I think, who have said that they can predict or that they know certain things, but what you said was that a miracle can happen at any time, which suggests that the timelines are not set necessarily. Maybe there are general missions, but there's some flexibility. What do you, is that just what we would call free will, do you think, or is there an even greater plan? What do you think really is driving everything here?
Well, with the person that I did the healing on with COVID, I did ask for a miracle for him. And I told Jesus and God that he had more work to do here on this earth in this lifetime, and that he needed to stay and he needed to be healthy. And when I got the call, all I did was look up and say, thank you. Thank you for providing him with a miracle. I know what miracles are. I've too happened. I've had more than that happen to me, but
Yeah, you've lived a miraculous life, by any definition, it sounds like. So my last question, Dan may have some closing questions or comments here, but I would really like to know your contact, your website, or where people can go to, or your email. We're going to put that in the YouTube link, to maybe see if your services might be right for them, if that's something that you do. And for the public, though, that's my main question is, how do you help people?
right now it's word of mouth. I've been doing some shows, some metaphysical shows, which have been very successful. I've been speakers on animal communication at several places. The last metaphysical show I was at, I spoke the second day at like 3:30 in the afternoon, and they closed at 7. And I thought, oh, there's not going to be very many people up here on stage. Stage was packed, and there were people lined up down below the stage. And I was really grateful for that, because I really wanted I wanted to share with them the possibilities they could have with their, animal companions. And it was a blessing for me to be able to share that with them.
Yeah, it sounds like a blessing and a miracle, and really opens up.
And the thing is when you
everything.
pray, you can ask for miracles. There's no limit on asking for miracles to happen. They do happen, and they can happen multiple times for a person or persons or animals. And a lot of people say, oh, well, I can't ask too much. You can ask. You can ask is my, the words that I have to say, because I have, and it has happened for many. And I believe that prayer and healing and communication all go in one.
And animals can be a big part of that, because of their
Animals
nature.
are a big part of that, yes.
They're so pure that we should look to them more frequently, I think, but because, like you said, they can teach us an unconditional love, which is something that humans sure could get a little bit better at in most cases.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot better, maybe.
Now, a lot of people have expectations with, oh, well, I'll lend you some money, and, subconsciously they think, but what am I going to get back? Animals don't do that. They're unconditional. They don't ask for anything. They just do it because that's what they're there for. They want to do it.
Yeah.
Susy, are you a regular? The way I met Susy was I went to the last IANS meeting here in Thurston County International Association for Near-Death Studies, and she was a speaker there. And thanks to Donna Seba, who is a former guest on our show, that's kind of how I met Susy. Do you regularly go to those IANS meetings?
I do when they're here. If they're in Seattle, I won't go. It's too far for me to go.
Right.
But yeah, I think Jackie, who ran the IONS meetings, has taken a little bit of a break on,
Right.
on keeping them in Lacey for a while. But I still get the emails and stuff from the IONS.
I was gonna say, maybe the next IONS meeting, we'll get to see you again, the Thurston County IONS meeting.
Yeah, when they start up again, most definitely. Donna Sebo is a very good friend of mine. We live just a few minutes away and we do a lot of things together. She actually is my mentor. When all these gifts and stuff came, I met her through her husband and we just clicked, and she has helped me and mentored me, and I'm very grateful for everything she's done for me. She's one of the most fabulous people I know.
Well, we're thankful to her because she introduced us to you, and
Oh.
you've been a great guest. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being on with us today. Hopefully people, if they're interested in your services and what you're all about, they can check out your email and possibly the website that might be coming. But
Yes,
thank
I
you.
will be getting a website when still waiting to get a computer so that my daughter-in-law, I'll give it to her and then she sets up websites, and I'll have her set up websites for me. She's already got a waiting line for people to have websites, so
Her services are in demand.
yes, they are.
Sounds like it. Well, thank you again, and thank you for what your messages about Dolly. I'll pass those on, and if you ever want to come back on our show, we'd be more than happy to have you.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you. I'm very grateful for the interview and everything.
Okay. Thank you, Susie. I appreciate it too. It was great talking with you.
Okay, you have a great day, and
Okay.
thank you for your service.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.